Hello, SpongeGex here, and hard to believe, but as of 2022, the series Shantae has turned 20. And for those who don't know, Shantae is a very underrated series, starting off at least. Nowadays, it's very popular, but back then, Shantae was a very underrated series that came out originally on the Game Boy Color about 20 years ago, back in 2002. And so, Shantae is a series where you control a girl named Shantae who's a half-human, half-genie, which means she's a human girl but with magical powers like a genie. And so, in a way, it kind of reminds me, like, aesthetic-wise, it reminds me a lot of, like, the Aladdin Genesis games, like, both style and music, and somewhat even the gameplay-wise, but... So you control Shantae, who has, like, this magical, she can, like, whip her hair, and also use, like, these special belly dances to transform into different animals and stuff like that. And so it's mostly, it feels like a cross between Aladdin on Genesis with a little bit of inspiration from Legend of Zelda. It could be considered one of those Metroidvania-like games because it has to do with a lot of, it doesn't have, like, a proper level select. You explore, like, a big overworld, and you crawl through dungeons and overworld levels, fight off waves of enemies, find keys and hidden items that are necessary to progress through the stories. And so I admittedly was very late into the Shantae series. I didn't get to play the series until the fourth entry, which was available on Xbox Game Pass a few years ago. And so I remembered hearing quite a bit of hype around the series, and I wanted to check it out for myself and see why the series was so beloved. And yeah, let's just say, I fell in love with the series as soon as I played the first entry. Well, my first entry, I mean. And so, it made me want to go back and play every single entry and judge for myself how the series goes as a whole. And so, luckily, I was able to get all the games on Nintendo Switch. Most of them are pretty affordable nowadays. You can get some for like $10 or $20 a piece. There's 5 games of Shantae altogether as of 2022. I mean, the developers say they still have a lot of interest and more to do with the series. Like, they considered wanting to make an animated series out of it. There's a possibility they might make a 3D entry someday. Who knows? But, so anyways, I thought in celebration of the 20th anniversary of Shantae, I wanted to revisit each game and say which ones I like the most. So, to be fair though, I've only played through each of these games once, so I'm not like, I didn't go through like a second playthrough of it or anything, so the footage you're seeing is me just revisiting my completed save files and all of that, but I still have memories of what it was like to go through this game at least, and so I'm going to rank what I think is, like, from least to best in the series. Now, keep in mind, I don't hate any of these entries. There are some that I find more flawed than others, though, but... Okay, so let's get started. So, what I consider to be the least impactful entry of Shantae is, oddly enough, the very first one. Now, yes, this one should be praised for being the one that gave the series its start. And, considering how this was a Game Boy Color game, I gotta admit, both visually and audio-wise, this game is fantastic. Like, the visuals almost look like they could have been a Game Boy Advance game. This really pushed the limits of the Game Boy Color. It's a very colorful game, and there's a lot that can be done in the game, but I feel like this one just feels very dated when compared to the later entries in the series. The controls on this are really frustrating, like just transforming into the other animals using the belly dances is really annoying. How you have, similar to like in games like Ocarina of Time, you have to memorize like a certain button command, and considering how this was a Game Boy Color game, there aren't a whole lot of control options. Because the Game Boy Color only had, like, 4 buttons and 1 directional pad, and so it doesn't give you enough choices for, like, item navigating or anything, and so and it's like when you're trying to navigate through your items, it doesn't label the items, and then when it comes to, like, going to the town settings, I feel like that's really sluggish. I think visually it's really cool, though. I like how you have the semi-3D look to it, but slowly controlling Shantae as she slowly turns around at 360 degrees to try to go into a building or not. It's really sluggish, and this game does not have very good backtracking, and that's one thing I should mention about every single Shantae game. It's a game that requires a lot of backtracking, And so, considering how this is one of the most sluggish entries in the series, considering how it was the first, it was on Game Boy Color, it does not have very good warp options for, like, a backtracking to previous levels, so it's going to take quite some time to get through this game, and so, luckily, you can buy a modern version of this game. Back then, it was only available for Game Boy Color, but recently it got a re-release on Nintendo Switch digitally. And so, with the digital version, it lets you play in the original game's format, along with an enhanced Game Boy Advance version, where if you played the game on Game Boy Advance originally, it would have enhanced the visuals, and honestly, I think the visuals look kind of worse on the Game Boy Advance. They claim it's supposed to be better, but it just looks brighter. I honestly think it looked better with the Game Boy color schemes. But otherwise, luckily it has a save state option, so even they're aware of how hard the original Shantae was. And that's one thing I forgot to mention. This one's probably one of the hardest entries of the series, so yeah, that's quite a pain to get through. But yeah, there's just a lot of things that slow this game down. Slow pace, hard difficulty, so it's still a decent game for its time, but I think compared to all the other entries, it's just poorly aged in comparison. So up next, we have Shantae 2 Risky's Revenge, which was originally for the DSiWare, and it got a special HD enhanced port for Nintendo Switch. And so Risky's Revenge is arguably the easiest in the series, and unfortunately the shortest. It's still a fun game, though, but similar to the first game, compared to other games, though, the other entries just feel better in comparison. But comparing to the Game Boy Color version, Risky's Revenge is much more colorful. It really looks like a Game Boy Advance game, despite how it came out on DSi. And it's like if the original game really reflected the visuals of a later NES game, a really good one at that, then this one definitely resembles the looks of a Super Nintendo game. And so it has much better sound quality, much better animations, much better visuals, and the controls for transforming into animals are so much better this time. You no longer have to use button inputs. Instead, you press a button, and as she belly dances, she'll swap between 3 different dances. And so it's like when she starts dancing, that'll turn her into a monkey. And then once you get the other abilities, her second dance will allow her to transform into an elephant. The final transformation on this one was a mermaid. And so, yeah, unfortunately, that's one shorter than there was from the first game. The first game, you had a spider and a harpy, and so here they got rid of those two and replaced it with the mermaid, which allows you to swim underwater, where the monkey allows you to climb up slopes, and the elephant allows you to ram through hard walls and stuff like that. And so, also, I like the inventory system in this one a lot better. It's a lot easier to manage, and I like how you have the magic meter that allows you to use some of your spells until they wear off, and so you got typical things like potions, elixirs that help, or magic vials that help heal your magic gauge, and you got these power-ups where you can shoot flames or spike balls and lightning clouds. And so overall, I did like this one a lot better than the first one, but I do agree though it is way too short and a little on the easy side. There were a few parts where I did have to look up what to do next, though, because that's one thing that the Shantae series is unfortunately known for. It is pretty punishing when it comes to giving hints on where to go next sometimes, but luckily this was one of the easier games, so like I said, I had to look up a few times, compared to some of the other entries where I had to look up multiple times on what to do next. But yeah, overall, Risky's Revenge, it was a decent sequel, and it surprisingly has a bit of a cliffhanger ending. So this game ends with, although Shantae was able to defeat her arch enemy Risky, unfortunately Risky drained Shantae of her powers. She sucked him into a magic lamp, and so she turns into a normal girl at the end. And so that actually carries over heavily into the third entry in the series. And so that's one thing I forgot to mention about the Shantae series, the characters. So it's unfortunately, Shantae, she's a very likable character. She's very quirky, very happy and optimistic, but unfortunately the world that surrounds her is very unpleasant. the people she's forced to call herself her friends, they are honestly all terrible people. They can't even get along with each other, and sometimes they'll even backstab or betray Shantae, and you just feel so sorry for this character. She's such a nice character, and she honestly deserves better. It's like the only likable character in her life is probably her uncle. I would say one thing I like about this one is it really helped establish the world of Shantae a lot more. It introduced a bunch of the characters who we'd see further down the line, mainly enemy characters. You got like a Squid Baron, who's like a hilarious, pathetic villain who's not so villainous, but you got like the other Baron characters like Armor Baron, Hypno Baron, and they make like quite a comeback in some of the later games. And then Shantae in the Pirate's Curse. And so, yeah, you're probably thinking this whole list is going to be a numerical order, going where it gets better with each new entry. And no, that's not true. Otherwise, for the first 3 entries, yes, I do think each one was gradually better than the previous. So, this one came out on 3DS originally, and this is one I missed out on, because, like I said, I got into the series very late, so a lot of these games I never really heard of until after Half-Genie Hero. I just remember a lot of people being hyped for that game, and it really got me interested in wanting to look back on the series. But so Shantae in the Pirate's Curse takes place right after Risky's Revenge, where Shantae lost her powers, but apparently this gives a bit more of a backstory to the character Risky, although not a whole lot. And that's one thing that does kind of bother me about the Shantae series, how you know, I feel like you can have some good I feel like it could have some good opportunities for certain plots, but storytelling isn't really its main goal. It just wants to make like a retro-styled video game. So it has like very loose narratives where things are basically explained to you or just like mentioned but not really gone into like well-developed detail. Like in the first game, it's established that Shantae and Risky are already enemies, so I kind of wish we got a bit more backstory, like it properly introduced us to these characters. I don't know, maybe someday we'll get a Shantae prequel. I doubt it, but that'd be really cool. And so, yeah, Risky was just like a bratty pirate who just always wants to top Shantae at everything, basically. And you just don't know what her deal is. And so I really wish we could have got a game that established that. But so, anyways, we've already seen 2 games in a row where Risky was a real nuisance towards Shantae. And so what did they do for the 3rd entry? They do the whole good guys and bad guys have to partner up deal. And so she has no choice but to ask for Shantae for her help. And so, but Shantae doesn't have her powers anymore. And Risky basically hints that Shantae has a chance of getting her powers back if she helps her out with this. And so, unfortunately, this is a game that has one of those bad ending, true ending things. So if you get the bad ending, you'll beat the game to a point where Shantae can't finish the final boss, but Risky will do it for her. And in exchange, though, Shantae misses out on getting the chance to get her powers back. And so, but either way, the next entry in the series still happens, which is based on the good ending of this game, where she gets her powers back. But before that, so this one is a lot like Risky's Revenge in a way. It uses a lot of the same visuals, like the same art style, but one thing I forgot to mention about Risky's Revenge was how it had a gimmick where it had basically map hopping, where the characters could jump from like a bit of a dimensional plane, where like to go further through levels, they could either jump out of the screen or in towards the screen to get to the next areas. And that was one thing I actually did have a complaint about with Risky's Revenge. I thought the map in that game was pretty bad. It was really hard to read. I couldn't even tell where Shantae was, or what it was telling me where I was at or anything. So yeah, that was really confusing. I was not a fan of that. And so I feel like in comparison, the Pirate's Curse is a huge improvement. The map system is a little bit better. I still feel like level transferring is a little bit more difficult in this game. I thought Risky's Revenge did a great job at giving you a bunch of checkpoints for like loading points from point A to point B. And so while this one definitely has like a decent level select, where it allows you to go to different islands the further you progress through the game, So yeah, that alone is cool. However, there's no way to warp between the checkpoints, between like the overworld or the dungeons, which can make backtracking in this game a real pesky problem. And that's one of the biggest complaints I have with this game. The backtracking is way too ridiculous and very unmerciful. It barely gives you hints sometimes, and there's some really well hidden things in this game that are like practically impossible to find. You just gotta randomly stab at the ground or run into a wall for something to happen, and it just doesn't give you a hint that you gotta mess around with these objects, or I don't know. So yeah, I thought this was probably the longest entry out of all the Shantae games, and so it was probably one of my least favorite ones to go through in a way. So although it is annoying to get through, it's definitely brutal and challenging, I still can't deny though that it is an improvement over the past two entries. Despite how Shantae lost her magical abilities, the new abilities she gets in this game were actually really fun and useful. Throughout the game, she gets some of Risky's like lost pirate gear, and so she lets Shantae use it in the meantime until all of this is over. And so she can use like Risky's hat to propel through the air. She can use a gun. She can use a scimitar to pierce through the ground. She has like a dash attack, and so, yeah, she has a lot of stuff to work with, and, Pirate's Curse, it was, a decent game, but it got really frustrating down the line, the constant, backtracking got really annoying. It really makes me hope that someday we can get, Shantae games that don't rely on getting key items that require backtracking. I'd kind of prefer, like, I still love the idea of a hub world where you gotta explore it to access the new levels, but I'd kind of like a game that has a proper level select. Shantae and the Seven Sirens. So this is the latest entry in the series, and I hate to say it though, because I know depending on who you ask, some people say they think this is the greatest in the series, and I honestly disagree, and I'll get more to that when I get to my number one, but so, yes, I was pretty excited for this one. This was my second Shantae game I ever played after playing the one that will be number one on this list. So, for those who've already played all 5 Shantae games, they probably already know which one's coming. But so, Seven Sirens takes a lot of the complaints I had about previous Shantae games and amplifies it. Because, remember how I said I hate how the Shantae series relies too much on backtracking? And I'm not really that much of a fan for like the Metroidvania kind of games where you got like a big maze to explore. So that's the gimmick of Seven Sirens. You explore a giant maze. The whole world is laid out like a maze, and it is really tedious and tiring to get through. However, I can't deny though that while the world of the game is very forgettable, the gameplay has been heavily improved upon. There are a lot of things to do in this game. So, as I mentioned in previous games, Shantae, her transformations were where you had to like either do button commands or you had to slowly watch Shantae dance and then wait for a certain command before you can transform. This one, they heavily improved it by improving the controls to where the transformations are used as attacks now. So, like, they replaced the monkey ability, which allowed her to climb up walls or dash across the screen. They replaced that with a newt ability, where as soon as Shantae jumps to a wall, she'll automatically transform and latch onto the wall. Now, I think that was a great addition. Or like how instead of the elephant, you now have a giant turtle, where you can use that as a ground pound attack, or you can even hold the B button to charge up and let it loose. And so that's really cool. I love all the new abilities they added. And they even added, like one of the last abilities you get is like this octopus ability, which acts a lot like the multi-jump ability you had in Pirate's Curse. One of the last items you got in that game was a giant cannon where Shantae shot it towards the ground and it allowed her to get extra jumps. And so I liked how they did that for the octopus. The octopus felt a lot like a replacement for the cannon ability, giving Shantae multiple jumps. But, so, alongside that, though, the Seven Sirens definitely had a really neat presentation compared to other Shantae games, because this was the first entry in the series to have actual animated cutscenes. And so, at the beginning, you get, like, a really fun little anime intro that was made by the same team that made Kill la Kill. I honestly kind of wish we got more cutscenes like that throughout the game, because Well, I wouldn't say the cutscenes in the game are bad. They do kind of feel like they're made of some kind of like rigged animation, like something that you would see in Flash or something. So there are times where the animation looks good, but then there's times where you see it in motion, it doesn't look right. Otherwise, it's like still image-wise, it definitely looks like an anime, but I don't know. There are certain shots or CG elements that don't blend in well during some of the animated scenes, and a lot of these are just weird transition scenes of Shantae encountering an enemy or falling through a trap or something, and I kind of would have rather have seen actual cutscenes that move the story along. And so, otherwise, I think, I praise this game for improving the controls and adding some fun features that you can do in this game. Like the trading card system's really fun, where when you defeat certain enemies, you can get certain cards where you can equip them and enhance Shantae's abilities. That's really fun, but I think one of the worst parts about this game, though, is the 7 Sirens themselves. They're supposed to be like the big enemies of the game, but they get like no introduction. I know, like, later on in the game, they actually did update the games to give them actual dialogue when you encounter them. Like, they get actual text bubbles. But considering how I played this game early on, I haven't revisited the game since, I haven't replayed any Shantae games. Like, I didn't go all the way through them again after beating them once. So I wouldn't know how heavily they improved this game. But I remember this game got a big update, like, this year or last year, where it added some new modes, and none of them were enough to draw me back into the game. And so, I'll praise this game for improving the controls, but otherwise, I feel like this is kind of a downgrade from the previous entry, and I think I don't want to spoil, like, why this one is worse than the next one. So I think when I talk about what I think is the greatest Shantae game, I'll explain a little more on why I think that one was a huge improvement over its, why its sequel was a huge downgrade compared to number 1. Without further ado, let's get on to number 1. What I think is the greatest Shantae game of all time is Shantae Half-Genie Hero, especially the Ultimate Edition for Nintendo Switch. So, this was a big step up for the Shantae series. I mean, it feels like each Shantae game, well, they're mostly the same gameplay mechanics and all that. They all have something different to offer. So the first Shantae game, that was the introduction. The second one, it introduced like higher visuals and the dimension jumping. And then you have the third entry, which had more worlds to explore, and it gave Shantae a new arsenal of items and quality improvements to make the gameplay a little more interesting. Also, I forgot to mention, but Pirate's Curse was also the first one to give Shantae her voice actress, Christina V. And so I think she's like a cute voice for Shantae. She gives her such like a naive and hopeful voice, and very adventurous and quirky. And so apparently we learn in the next entry that she also has a singing voice. And so in number 1, Half-Genie Hero, this was the first Shantae game I ever played, and right when I first played it, I was blown away by it. Right from the title screen, when you hear that epic music, which is like, I forgot to mention about the music in these games. They are so good, and I like how each and every sequel, it takes the music from the past games and it revamps them to sound better. And so, throughout the series, you hear like a song from a previous game and it sounds better than the last, and so, that's one thing I forgot to mention about 7 Sirens. I thought the music was kind of a downgrade in comparison to some of the past games. I just thought, like, just listen to the title screen in comparison. Pretty bland, huh? Now listen to the title music from Half-Genie Hero in comparison.
Shantae, Half-Genie Hero.
is just so epic. Half-Genie Hero just feels like this was a big deal for Shantae. It was the first one to go out of the pixelated view, so it uses a more hand-drawn looking art style. This one has more polished visuals, less pixelated. It's got hand-drawn characters, but in front of 3D backgrounds, and I really loved this, and this is another reason why I felt like the Seven Sirens was a downgrade, because where this one had the cool 3D backgrounds with the flat characters running across it, its sequel, it simplified the backgrounds so they all look flat and they don't stand out anymore. And there's a number of reasons for why Half-Genie Hero is my favorite. This one feels like a celebration of all the past Shantae games. It has like a nod to so many of the past games. So not only are there a lot of shout-outs like previous characters and bosses, but not also you got like a bunch of remixes of some of the music from the past games, and they sound even better than ever. Like, this one has the best soundtrack, it has some of the best level designs, and the transformations. This one has, like, where most past Shantae games had like 3 to 4 transformations, this one you have like plenty. You got like I think like 12 altogether. So like 8 of them are required to progress through the game, but then there's like the remaining ones are like actual bonus ones you can get just for like going through the game and finding like these hidden secrets. But alongside with being a huge celebration of Shantae, I mean, you could tell like even the developers were treating this like a celebration of Shantae, to the point where they included a bunch of the fan art as a bonus feature in this game. And so there's just it takes all the gameplay of the past ones and it really polishes it up. It makes it look more visually stunning. And once again, you got Christina V voicing Shantae, where she started voicing her back in the Pirate's Curse one, which was the first and only game at the time where there was some voice acting in it. And so Christina V returns as Shantae in this one, and it wasn't until Seven Sirens where we got more voice acting from the other characters. Otherwise, you really like Seven Sirens felt like it was trying to be an improvement over what this one did, but I felt like overall it kind of failed. It's like, yeah, it had the cutscenes, which was something I was wanting with this game. Even I thought, like, man, wouldn't this game be so much better if it had cutscenes? But it made me realize that, yeah, a game needs more than cutscenes to be good, and this one just has so much replay value compared to the other games. It still has a bit of a difficulty, but I still think it's slightly easier than Pirate's Curse, but it still has some backtracking. It still has the annoyance of having to collect all these items to get a true ending, which, surprisingly, Seven Sirens was like, ever since Pirate's Curse, every game since then had a good and a bad ending, but luckily Seven Sirens, with how bloated that game was, it didn't go down the road of having one in the end, luckily. But so Half-Genie Hero, though, I overall like had a blast with this game, and even the main game, it's like, while that was fun, there's so much more fun to be had with the bonus DLC, which is included with the Ultimate Edition at no extra cost. And so you got like a mode where you get to play as Risky Boots and replay the game's story through her side of the story. And so playing as Risky was pretty interesting. A lot of her moves were definitely inspired by Shantae's moveset from Pirate's Curse. And you got like all these different modes where Shantae wears different outfits to go through different the same game but with different gameplay perspectives. You have like a ninja mode, a fan service beach mode where she's running around in a bikini, and you gotta make sure she doesn't get sunburnt or anything, and so you gotta either jump in the water or find sunscreen to prevent her from overcooking. And then you got like the officer mode, which is based on the Mighty Switch Force series, where you have to do some puzzle platforming by activating these switches to make certain platforms appear or disappear. And then you got the pajama mode, where she is running around in her PJs and she attacks enemies with a pillow. It's really funny. Then there's a mode where you get to control all of her friends and swap between them one after the other. So they're on a rescue mission to save Shantae after she was turned into like an evil genie during the climax of this game. And so, yeah, there's just so much I wish I could say about this game, but I'd be here all day if I did. But yeah, I think like for all the heights and weaknesses that the Shantae series has, I feel like Half-Genie Hero just, like, did the best job at, like, reviving the franchise. It took, like, all the improvements the past games had and skyrocketed it even further. And to the point, they did it so well that even the following entry that they're hyping up to be even better than this was honestly underwhelming in comparison. Now, I don't know. I remember hearing a lot of people say they liked Half-Genie Hero, but I've heard some people claim they liked Pirate's Curse better or something. But honestly, I strongly disagree. I think Half-Genie Hero is the best in the series, and I felt like the Seven Sirens was a huge downgrade in comparison. So I still think, though, that the Shantae series still has a lot to learn, though. I think they need to cut back on the maze-like gameplay, less on collecting items to progress. I'd like it to be a little more linear, not too linear, but I still like the idea of hub worlds and all that. I just want the gameplay to be less tedious. But it's still a great series with a great playable character, great music, great visuals, great abilities, and I look forward to seeing how the series can possibly evolve in the future. And so, yep, here's the Shantae and turning 20. And so, do you guys agree with this list? What's your favorite Shantae game, or what's your least favorite Shantae game? Feel free to let me know in the comments. And, well, that's all I have to show for now. So, thank you for watching. See you next time, and have a great day.